Greetings to the students of Rufus King International Middle School. Thank you for this opportunity to be able and speak with you on two very key issues that are very much pertinent within our society today, and that's racism and violence. My name is Jamaal Smith. I am the Community Violence Prevention Manager for the City of Milwaukee Health Department Office of Violence Prevention. My work is centered around public policy analysis, community engagement on violence prevention strategies, as well as the implementation of our Blueprint for Peace, which was a community-driven document created in 2016 centered on comprehensive violence prevention strategies that we can implement throughout the city. So again, I'm honored to be a part of this conversation. I'm looking forward to one day even meeting all of you and having these types of conversations in person. Just so not only you all can hear from me, but I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear what you all think, how you all feel in terms of the racism and violence that we see, and how we can all work together in order to make the society better than what it is currently, and how we can continue to improve on it so they can be the city that we all want to see. So let's get right to it. Let's get into the questions. The first question is, why did you choose to help the community in the city of Milwaukee? And the answer to that is, I'm from here. I'm originally from Milwaukee, born and raised right here in the city. Grew up in the 53206 zip code, where everyone always references for all the negative disparities that exist. And there are some. Let's not act as if there aren't. However, I had different experiences growing up in that neighborhood. And I learned about community. I learned about love. I learned about endurance. I learned about strength. I learned about people coming together for the sake of maintaining safety, maintaining camaraderie. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful experience. I grew up on 9th Street between Keith and Atkinson Avenue. And I learned so much there. You know, my parents put much into me. My grandparents put much into me, my family as a whole. And I'm definitely honored to still be here to do this work for the city. And when I graduated from the Alabama State University, which is a historically black college university, it was an obligation for me to come back home and be able to do the work that was necessary to help change the direction that the city was headed in. So that's why I chose to help the city. Number two, did you ever experience racism or violence in your community growing up? And how did that make you feel? Unfortunately, yes. The first time I've ever experienced it was when I was 12. This was in New Orleans, and we were there for a family reunion. And that was the first time I was ever called the N-word. And it was a difficult experience for me because growing up, my father would take me there was an old bookstore called Reader's Choice, and I would learn about the civil rights movements, all social justice movements, learned about, from the March on Washington, all the way up to the work of Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer, learned about Shirley Chisholm, but also learned about, Fred Hampton and Huey P. Newton and Eldridge Cleaver and Bobby Seals and, Angela Davis, all those different names that were very key within the civil rights era, the Black Power movements. And obviously we know what the connotation is that comes with that word. So for me to be called that the first time, it made me feel like I was less than human because of the fact that word was used as a means to control people who didn't identify as white, but particularly black people. So for that to finally be referenced to me, it was as if, I was just like a spot on the wall, right? I had no value. And one thing I live by is I want you to recognize my color, but still acknowledge my humanity. I identify as a black man, a proud black man, but at the same time, I am human. And the only way that we're able to really get past racism outside of fighting against the systems that continue to perpetuate it is that we all recognize the humanity in each person. So that always sticks with me, and especially given the fact that my son, who actually is turning 13 today, May 27th, is something that I keep in mind as well, which leads right into the third question. Why is addressing racism important to you? It starts with him, right? I don't want him to experience the things that I've experienced, that my parents experienced, their parents and generations before them, right? But we see that racism is still very much permeating through the fabric of society And it's unfortunate, we would think that in 2021, in the 21st century, we would be past the entire concept of racism, but unfortunately, we are not. So addressing racism, I think, is definitely key because that is the practice that leads to the intentional discrimination and the disenfranchisement of Black and Brown communities, particularly. So being able to fight against a system that keeps people, a certain group of people, from uh, living their fundamental rights and being who they are is something that I don't take lightly, and it's something that I will continue to do until I can't do it anymore. So that's why I address racism every day. Question 4: what is one thing you do every day to help make Milwaukee a better place? Well, one thing is making sure that uh, we're getting I'm getting different representatives within multiple systems to recognize how much of like what they have done is complicit in violence as well. For example, educational inequities for Black and Brown students is violence. So working with uh, representatives from MPS or any other school system or different schools and having conversations about how inequities for Black and Brown students is another form of violence, right? We have to look at that as violence as well. But then also, I've had the opportunity to work with families who have been victims of violence and be able to provide them resources, to provide protections if necessary, to work uh, with our 414 Life team, which is our violence interrupters, to try and alleviate any possibility of there being retaliation. But then also just being able to lobby on a local, a state, and a national level about the need for there to be more of an investment in violence prevention because we know that prevention is better than intervention work. And then also, finally, been doing a lot of teachings and educational uh, presentations on racial inequities and the impact of systemic violence through racial inequities. So, it's first going to take those types of conversations to happen where people have to recognize that they may be complicit in the practice of racism, even if it's unintentional, right? Everybody doesn't do it with the idea of getting into and racism and feeling as if that's where they want to be. Some people just, because of traditions, just carry on certain practices. And until we're able to bring recognition to those traditions that have been hurtful to people of color, the racism will continue. And then question 5: how can we as young people help to stop racism and violence in Milwaukee? This is a major, major question. I think the first thing is what you all are doing now is very important. Just bringing awareness to the impact of racism and violence in Milwaukee. For those who may not know, the what is the 200 nights of protest that happened in the 60s for fair housing under the leadership of Father James Groppe, and it was presented by the illustrious Vale R. Phillips. But many who escorted Father James Groppe, along as well as Lloyd Barbie and Vale R. Phillips, among them were called the NAACP Youth Commandos. So these were young people who were also a part of the fight for fair housing in Milwaukee. If interested, there's a book that is called Selma of the North. It's written by, the author's name is Patrick Jones, and it talks about the civil rights insurgents or the civil rights acts and the movement that happened right here in Milwaukee. But one of the key movements in that era was around affordable housing, and the youth commandos were a part of that work. So just being willing to be open, to be willing to have difficult conversations like this, to be able to speak out about the impact of racism and violence, knowing that racism is violence, but also knowing that gun violence and reckless driving, all of the alikes, all of that is important, and all those issues should be spoken out on in terms of awareness and bringing awareness to them. So again, I'm honored to be a part of this. Thank you all for allowing me to participate in this very important initiative. I'm looking forward to meeting you all one day. Until then, you all take care.